Right, so here's a main end bearing, and the subject of the next video is going to be taking this out and changing it for new ones, but I've got to go and get new bearings now, and I'll show you how I got the crank shaft clear of the other bearing. In the other video, in the next video, but this video is long enough. So I'm using this tool. Quick note about how I've made a video, I think, about using this tool. It comes like described, and these little adapters, you put those in the engine casing. And the actual tool is stepped, and so these steps, like this one here where my thumb is higher up than this one down there, and that corresponds to these adapters, which are at different heights. So then you can rotate the arms round to get a nice and even push. Alright, so the way I've set this, I've used spacers just so that I can get a perpendicular force on this. You know, it hasn't quite worked out for me, and without using sort of extra washers and things. But that's, you know, it's made me feel more comfortable to get a perpendicular force, so I'll just tighten that up and we'll see what happens. That is usually what it sounds like as it gives up its grip. Getting easier to turn. There we go. Okay, it did push the bearing out, and what we can see actually is something here. Oh, there you go. I said that's what we've found. Look at that. That's a part of the ball bearing, and it's gone straight into the oil seal. It's amazing this bike still started, you know. Look at that, it's punctured the oil seal, and there's the garter spring. So, let's have a look at that bearing. Oh, there's no way of knowing where that piece of metal actually came from. You know, so whoever said that there sounds like something's running around in your engine, mate, I think, you know, it might actually be. Whoever said that it sounds like there's something running around in your engine, I think you might have actually been right. I mean, it's what it sounded like to me as well, but I just couldn't believe it, you know. Yeah. It looks like a fragment of ball bearing case. And it's punctured the seal. Amazing. Oh, amazing, it still ran. Yeah. Oh, I'll have to dig it out and have a look at it. So when I do any prying of these things out, I always put masking tape over the end of the thing because I don't want to score anything, and it's very easily done. So here's that. Let's get it into the light and have a look at it. Yeah, it's it looks like ball bearing case. Anyway, well, so there's certainly something floating around in there. The next thing for me to do actually is to remove this bearing off here, and trusty crank shaft splitter for that. Let's go and get that tool. So this is the ABS, the inside of the ABS case of crankshaft splitter that I got off eBay, and it was the probably the least expensive one that was reliably going to be delivered. And you know, there's various videos of me, you know, playing around with these bits, but you know, this has been such a useful tool. For the money, it's so worth it. So let's get on with setting it up to get that bearing off that crankshaft. Yeah, so the bearing is like stuck on there, so it's going to be quite a slow process setting this up. So I'm going to set it up and come back. So this is the first stage. I've put the sort of frame on, and you know, the reason there's a video of me dremeling out some of the jaws on this is because it's a very tight fit. That bearing is right up against the edge of the, well, it's not right up against, there's like 25, 30, 50 foul gap there, but you know, that's what you have to get the tool into. So a number of times it might slip off, but it will eventually bring this forward and you can get it right under there, and then it comes off a lot quicker. That's a normal sound. Right, what I'm going to do is show you something. There you go, it's like 5 or 6 millimeters down there. So it's opening up, and at this stage I could actually position the tool on there more comfortably, but as it's pulling it off, I'm just going to carry on. So there's my bearing, I think it's Nachi by name. Okay. Now what I actually expected to find like more damage on this bearing, because I was thinking that that piece that was stuck in, that piece there that's stuck in the seal, to me it actually looked like one of these ball overlaps that hold the ball bearings in, but they do all look to be in place on both sides. Oh no, there's one. Oh look, there's one missing. So an actual ball. And that is what it is. And that's what's happened. Let me, probably not obvious. This is a ball bearing. Right there where the end of the screwdriver is a silver thing. Now the ball bearing should actually be covered by small pieces of metal. Like all these spaces here are ball bearings. And they've got little shields. Little shields. And for some odd reason, probably because I didn't use a Koyo bearing, not name dropping or anything, that shield has come off and gone in the seal like that. So that ball bearing, this was in the process of disintegrating. It's a little bit rough, but anyway, you heard the engine, and that's the problem. Still, I'm pleased in a way that there is an obvious reason behind the noise. And so what I'm going to do is use, more expensive Japanese bearing. These are Japanese. They're just not. Okay, so we definitely have a reason. This is a shroud of the ball bearing that is now visible, and the shroud is embedded in the oil seal. So now we know what the problem is. It's fixable, okay, because we just need to replace these components. The other side as well, because they come as a set. So there, problem solved. I think I was right to actually take it apart, based on the sound that it was making. And, because what's going to happen? It's just going to lose other ones, and if you get one of these come out in the engine, it would have been even worse. Look at that, look at a garter spring. That's just amazing, isn't it? It's amazing it still ran, actually. I'm really pleased about that. It's because the seal wasn't actually broken. So it was a good seal, but it wasn't a very good bearing. So I've got a shopping list to write. Right, it's time to remove the D10 plunger, because you don't want to forget to do that in a rush to get the motor back together. So here's the end of it. It's 14mm. These are really, when I got this motor it had been in a fire, and this plastic end, or nylon end I suppose it is, was all burned up, so I had to get a new one, and it was quite hard to find. I'm not saying it's impossible to find, but so you want to look after that bit. Here's the inside of it. It's on a spring. Your D10 plunger. So right side of the engine. Put that in a safe place. You can just pull out this seal and bearing it. They're not that bad actually. Okay. I needed more leverage on this, I think. Oops. More leverage. There she comes. Yeah, that was a shame. Probably get away with using that again, but I've bought new ones. To remove the bearing, you get a suitable socket, and as this isn't going to be not going to be reused, so you can knock it out with the center. Okay, it's not going to be reused. You not supposed to put them in by hitting the center. You're supposed to use something around the circumference. But anyway, there we go. A few whacks and that should be out. Actually, I've decided to use this little shop press to press that out. Simply because, you know, it's here in the shop, you may as well use it, you know. So it comes with a lever bar. Again, you should press it out with sort of a suitable socket. And with this, you just, same as most presses, tighten that, put the lever bar in the jack thing, and down comes the plunger. That's a normal sound. Any minute now it's going to drop to the floor. Like that. Yeah, so then you really release the pressure on the jack. Let that float up to the top. And leave it off. There we are. Well, you know, once you've used the inside as a sort of lever, they're not that good. It twists the shrouding. Well, yep. So next time I want to put something in, you want something that's just bigger than the, push it in on the outside. The nearest I've got is this 36mm socket. Probably be better if I had a 35 or maybe even a 34 with that brand. Yeah, so there we go. That's I left the gearbox in place. It wasn't particularly a big deal to leave the gearbox in place and just use the press to press that out. If I was going to hammer it, I probably would have took the gearbox out just to save anything happening. So I went shopping at Yambits and I've got my Koyo bearings. I've got the gear shaft oil seal and the other seals and a new gasket. The side cover, engine side cover gasket. So, you know, so I've just taken the new bearing, put it in there. I'm gonna tap it square, get it started. Now I haven't used heat, you know, and I haven't done anything like put these in the freezer or anything because I'm deciding not to do it that way today. Well, the advantage of hitting it home is that the pitch will change when it's seated. It'll sound hollow and then suddenly go firm. Just make sure that that oil channel there is clear. It's nice, isn't it? So here's the left hand side. I've just gone over that with a piece of kitchen towel. There's an oil hole there, and make sure that's clear. No Hylamar or anything like that stuck up there, or you know, any piece of cleaning rag or whatever. So I'm putting the other bearing in. I put it with the righting side up, and I'm just going to square it up. Okay, now I'm going to use a little hammer. This gear shaft seal is it's an SKF seal, which is a good brand. And it's a grey colour, which means it's probably Vitron and not nitrile. And so the replacement, which is quite cheap, is probably nitrile. I just think this one will probably last longer, so I've cleaned it and reseated it. So I used, on this one, different sockets are available, so they have different widths. There's a 15mm socket which just went round the edge of the seal, and I just seated that. It seemed to be not seated correctly, so it's now seated, but it's a good quality seal, that. And so I just keep this one as a spare, really. Incidentally, I did cover it in a 3-in-1 before I put it in, and I didn't want to put the seal in dry, so I put it in coated in wet. Now the next seal, which I've bathed in oil, which is the right hand seal. The right hand seal is double lipped, so you've got to make sure you get it in the right way round. And I'm pretty sure that I know which way round it goes. I think it goes in. So I put the left hand oil seal in. I use the back end of this 36mm socket, so that side does the bearings and this side can do the seal. It's over there quite just enough to get it home. It's just below the shoulder. So the way I've put this in is with the writing on the seal, which might just be visible. The writing on the seal facing upwards. So some writing about there. So it's a double lipped seal. It's got a spring like that on each side. But I think it goes this way up. Hope so. Okay, so I've got the right hand half down, and I've just lubricated the bearing. So I'm putting the crank in this way round, with the stator end. We'll go for the stator there. So this end goes through this hole here. Probably be a good idea just to lube that first and then put it in there. And you just want to make sure that the con rod is between these, in this gap here. Yeah. So she sits there like that. You want to keep the con rod between these two in that gap. You know, if your engine's in reasonable nick, you shouldn't actually need any Hylamar here. It's optional really. So now I'm putting the left hand on. Put plenty of lube around that seal. A bit more. Well, it doesn't always go right, you know. So I wasn't happy with the oil that was oozing out along the base there. So I've got some jointing compound, which I'm going to use and apply with a paintbrush down these seams, and then put it back together. Okay, well, it's, you know, a process of tapping. You can use bits of stud, you know, tap it, get it closer and closer, make sure nothing is binding up. It's falling apart. Okay, and now I'm going to put the screws back in there and close that right up. Hear the creaking. That's a normal sound. That's normal. What's that? Metal on metal sound as the bearing goes out. Now, I didn't put any thread locker on these, so that's interesting. Okay, I couldn't find the torque values for these, so I've just done them up really tight. Not so tight that they'll break anything though, you know, just tight. So next, I've got the D10 plunger. It can be a bit fiddly to put this in. Just make sure it's clean. That's why I'm putting it in at this stage, because I don't want it to fall apart. This doesn't have to be sort of screwed into any serious torque. In fact, don't even bother using a spanner on this. Just put it in nice and hand tight. Ow. I never find that it needs a new washer, okay? Because you don't fill the oil. The oil level don't go to the brim on the motor. So it only ever has to withstand splashing. Right. So it's a good idea to put that spacer in there now. I mean, it'll probably drop out, but it's good and in there. So next we really want to put the gear selector back in there. So I'm going to turn the engine face down. So I've got a nice load of 2-stroke oil on the gear selector, and I've got making sure the circlip is on there, and it goes in this hole here. You get that nice and square, and you feel it hit. You feel it hit the that went all the way through at quite a pace. Probably going to look around there like that. So at this point, put the little spacer on there. It's an easy piece to lose. There we go. That spring clip can be a bit confusing. Now I've got to lift the engine up higher because my shaft has hit the bench there. Yeah, you don't want your shaft to hit the bench, so I've used greater spacing now here. So this is going to push in a bit further, he says. And I'll line this up as well. It's funny. Great. Yep, all the spring clips clipped out. There you go. Should be getting there now. It's very close. See that arm locates in the drum there. It's just, there she goes, pressing it in there. Yeah, that's one of the fiddliest bits of the whole thing. So that should, now let's put that circlip on there, or E-clip it is actually. Right, gonna flip it over and touch the other side. Incidentally, there are some measurements that you can perform on the gear selector mechanism, and this is the adjuster. But I was happy with the way this was functioning, and there's the lock. The lock nut hasn't been moved, so that's why I didn't bring any attention to doing the measurements, which you can have here and there and adjust it here. But as everything was functioning okay, and I haven't touched the lock nut, it won't need checking on this one, but your one might need it. If the gear selector isn't working, that is where you check it out. Anyway, so next for me, okay, so the motor's flipped up this side, stator side up. We've got a washer, goes over the seal, and another clip. Now then, there we go, pull that up a bit. Okay, I want to make sure that's seated, so I've got to tap it on a bit further. Okay, so that's nice and on there. So I'm just putting the stator on, and the way I usually locate, I mean there's only a certain amount of positions it can go, because it's just the 2 bolts holding it on this engine, and so it's, in order to get the neutral light switch connected, the neutral light wire connected to the switch, it has to be in this rotation. So it's with these marks at the top, I suppose, as well, but you can't really put this on any other way, so it's not a problem. So the stator screw retainings are here and here. Here's the neutral light switch wire going into the switch, and then this weather seal just goes in that slot, which I will line up properly in a moment. So at this stage I've also put some clean kitchen towel in this part of the motor where the crankshaft is, just to stop anything falling in there, because I don't want to have to take it apart again if something did fall in there, like a screw or something. So we'll just make sure there's a little space down there, so I'm going to adjust the packing. So next I'm going to carefully degrease this with a bit of white spirit and a cloth. And there's the inside of the rotor that needs degreasing as well. So another fiddly bit is this little woodruff key. We just want to put it in this. Now what I'm going to do is put it in the slot and then show you what I'm going to do. See, as it is at the moment, it's pointing up slightly. You want to get it horizontal, okay, like that. Maybe even pointing down very slightly off the horizontal. Oh wow. And when you go to fit it, make sure you've not got nothing attached to the magnet. Right, there's not really a great deal you can do to verify that you've got it all set up really nicely. You should be able to see the woodruff in there, and it probably won't turn if it's not connected. See what I mean? It's not located on the woodruff. So anyway, then we put the washer on there, and on my model there should be a spring washer, which I've got right here. It doesn't have to look like that one. And this one we will need to use the correct torque. So I've got a trusty torque wrench here. I've got it set to 49 Newton meters, which is about 36 point something foot-pounds per foot, which it says. So I'm just going to get this in position so that we can torque that up, you know. So I put the correct 49 Newton meters on this. Now I know that my nut does look a bit strange, and that's because I've used a different spring washer to normal. And that's all. That's all that's all I know. It's something for me to keep an eye on there. Anyway, so next for me on this is going to be this idler, which goes this way up. It has a thrust washer, and that should allow us just room to put this little circlip. I'm going to have to get some lights in a minute. Didn't click in. I hate it when they don't click in. It should have actually made a click noise, but I mean it's certainly in. Certainly in. Okay. So having fitted the Kickstart idler, it's time to fit the Kickstart assembly. And the way to do this is there's a solid chunk of metal in the center of the screen, and that goes behind that part of the casting, and the other part is this loop which goes in that slot like so. Oh yeah, and the pinion goes in the hole. The shaft goes in the hole, sorry, it's no pinion. So let's just get that in there. Okay. And then this loose loop, bring round with a pair of pliers and hook it around this lug, this capstan lug. So at this stage I can hold it with my finger, and then it comes round. It's probably going to need a bit of manhandling over that lug. Yeah, that's a bit annoying, but it's just it's quite a lot. It's just quite a lot of tension, that's what I was going to say. But it is holdable. So I just needed some pliers to sort of manhandle it in the hole there. Needed some pliers to manhandle that in there. But that's all there is to that. The idler shouldn't be connected to it. What have I got this on for? It's on a different mode. So now it's time, as we already fitted this spacer, we have this woodruff key. Now once upon a time I marked that as to which way up it goes. So it just sits there like that. This one's a lot simpler to do than the rotor. Now this has a little recess for its retaining nut, so I know which way up it goes. And just line it up to the woodruff. Which I'm doing in the dark here. Okay. Retaining nut. And that's got to be torqued up. So it's going to need the gizmo to stop the crankshaft rotating when we torque it. So I'm back with the torque wrench. I've got 58.8 Newton meters. So I'm going to do that now. It's a 19mm. Not very good camera work, is it? You're going to have to trust me on this. It is time to start assembling the clutch components, and yes, that's an egg box. So first we want to be dealing with this hole. first thing is this. This is push rod A, which is the left hand part of the push rod. And as this is all worn, I know that this is the bit that goes through the oil seal. So this is the bit that faces the weather. So what I'm going to do is just put some lube on that so that it goes through the push rod oil seal without catching it too much. And then I'm going to put it down this hole. Just make sure that's nice and clean. Okay, it is. As clean as it can be. It was rusty on the end. Okay. So next goes the ball bearing. That's why I kept it in an egg box. There's the ball bearing. It's on the end of the shaft, which is magnetised. I'll carefully go over there, pop it in there. Alright, this is where we have to get it to go through the shaft oil seal, which is not one to do. There it goes. It is now going through the shaft. Hope it didn't push the shaft out, push the seal out, sorry. Let's push the shaft out. Yeah, you have to trust me on that. there it is, where my index finger is. It's okay, the seal hasn't come out with it, so it's nice and square. Right, I'll leave that there for now. We're going to want the other components, the drum, etc. So next is this thrust washer, which I've marked which way up it goes. Goes there. And this centre bush. Now this has got oil spirals on it, and I've marked which way up it goes, so I know these spirals point downwards. It goes on there like that. Actually, at this point, could give it a bit of lube. It's just a bit two-stroke oil, it'll burn off. Just helps everything seat. So next is this drum. Now this has got an O-ring, which I've left. I mean, the clutch was working fine when I took this apart, so it wasn't very long ago. So to install this, it's just a question of lining up the teeth. There you go. So you've got the primary pinion there, and there's some other teeth. Oh no, there isn't. Oh well, just the primary pinion. So, you know, that's good. There you go. Start rotating the crank and the whole thing's turning nicely. Okay, now the clutch hob. And there should be a frost washer in there. It's stuck on the back. Okay, we can put that all in as one. Right, hang on a sec. We've got to take this part of the push rod out. Even if we didn't, we did anyway. Okay, and then there's another frost washer. Yeah, it's definitely got to come out, isn't it? Oh, the ball is still in there. ball out. Alright, anyway, now a nut. Ah, now a nut is going to be that's odd. I've done something wrong here, haven't I? Don't know. Right, so I took the ball bearing and the right hand push rod out while I do up the clutch hub retaining nut, which is a 19mm socket, and I've got 44 foot-pound on that, and you'll need to stop the hub basket rotating, which I'm using that tool there. So let's see if we can't do that. But it's 44 foot-pounds. Might be a good idea to put the motor down the other way up. Let's have a weight there. Okay, that angle made life very easy. So let's just push that down to 44 foot-pounds. Oh no, sorry, 44 Newton meters. Yeah, it's not foot-pounds. It's been 44 Newton meters there. Yeah. Okay. So here is the friction plates as removed, so they should just go straight on. Now as it was working, I'm not going to worry about sort of checking the thickness of the plates and things like that, because you know the clutch wasn't an issue with the bike. There was no reason why it should have developed an issue off the bike. Now, running low on card here, so the idea is to just line these up. SIM card is what I'm running low on, so I'm going to have to get on with it. Come on, you little bugger. There we go. That's odd. Got ya. Blimey. Get there in the end. And that was totally wrong anyway. Off the camera. Little springs. So each one has a little screw bolt and a washer. And you've got to do these up in a sort of even diagonal pattern, not to stress that plate out, which is just good practice really. I've seen them broken. You don't want to break one. You just have to wait for a new part, don't you? As well as fork out. Yeah, just give them a little bit of that sort of half turn and then swap to the opposite one. And the torque on those is 5 foot-pounds, which is so insignificant, you know, I wouldn't even bother doing it. I only did it in the name of consistency, you know, because I wanted them all the same. But you really needn't worry about torquing those, because 5 foot-pounds is hardly anything. You know, it's just not even a nip, you know, it's not even a nip tight. It's just, you know, like that. It's hardly anything. Yeah, so I put a nice big blob of grease on the Kickstart shaft, ready to go through the seal. And everything's done. I'm going to try and use the old gasket because it's nice and thick. Don't like the new one's not so thick. So I think, you know. So here's that template made of the clutch cover, and that's going on. And because I know where all the bolts are going, it's saving a lot of time. It's just putting them in there, getting them going, doing them up in a diagonal sort of pattern. Saving me all the time. And I've taken the oil pump cover off because that one won't go in if the cover's on. And I've got to fit the oil pump anyway. Here's the one with the clip, which that goes in. That is the oil pump inlet. Put that there, just pop that. Not wanting to do them up too tight. Now I've got to paint the clutch cover, so I'm going to have to stop putting this together because I want that paint to dry tomorrow. So that's as far as I'm going to get really. I could put the oil pump on, but it's a bit dark. So basically what I've done is with this is gone over it with 800 grit, so it's all nice and smooth. And then I've degreased it with white spirit, and I'll spray it with the same spray that I sprayed the rest of it. I'll remove these Allen bolts because I don't want to spray those. Simply because when you go to remove them or what have you, you just chip the paint off. So you may as well just leave them that stainless finish. I think, you know, it's up to you. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great paint, you know, if it was fuel proof, but it isn't. But there we go, there's a quick blow over there.